Welcome on another episode of Democracy Innovators podcast. And our guest of today is Josef Lentsch. Sorry. You're a political entrepreneur. You have written books, and you're founder and CEO of the Political Tech Summit. And so, as a first thing, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And would you like to tell us something about the Political Tech Summit? Because it was last month, yeah. So
happy to. Thanks very much. So, yeah, the Political Tech Summit was a premiere. It was Europe's first event of that kind, and we've been preparing it for about a year now. The idea was to close a gap in the landscape, in the political landscape, but also in the market. A gap because politics is a very fragmented landscape still in Europe. Politics is very much still nationally based. And of course, it's organized alongside political families. So there is not enough learning, particularly within the democratic center from center left to center right. And so we thought it would be great to create a space where peers can learn from each other very practically with a view to technology, but also where vendors and providers could meet with potential clients, where people could meet new partners. And I'm very happy to say that it has been very successful with more than 600 people from more than 40 nations. We have had great feedback. We did lots of surveying and interviewing, and people were really positive about it. So we already announced that there will be a second edition in January 2026 in Berlin once again. But for now, I think we are very, very happy and delighted how well this has actually worked and actually the impact it already has had. We've heard from people that they already took stuff and applied it within their organizations, within their political parties, unions, associations. And that's great. That's exactly what we want to happen.
And I was thinking about, the summit is about political tech, and there is the distinction between civic tech and Govtech. If you could tell us something more about.
Sure, happy to. So, civic tech is about empowering citizens digitally. So, for example, with transparency apps about parliaments and mandate owners, or stuff like Fix My Street, where people can put in complaints or can suggest ideas for improving city life. So this would be all under civic tech. Also civic participation. So when it comes to deliberative formats or consulting citizens, there are also quite a lot of platforms for that, and it's quite an established field. On the other hand, Govtech is about digitizing the public sector. So it looks at the administration and how we can improve, how we can make administration and government more efficient with digital means. And in between Govtech and civic tech, there's a space where organizations like political parties live, but also unions, associations, some nonprofits, businesses, anyone who's involved in the political arena, who's doing political communication, campaigning, electioneering. Those organizations have quite distinct and special needs. There are, of course, touch points and intersections with Govtech as well as civic tech, absolutely. And some organizations could be, I think, called, for example, Govtech as well as political tech and so on. But we really saw also at the summit that it's quite a special community that has not had the chance to get together so far. And the Political Tech Summit brought this political tech community together for the first time.
Yeah, I see the both Civic Tech and Govtech. I mean, that sometimes they overlap each other also because it's a very new field. And before going back talking about political tech, wanted to ask you if you would like to share something about your background, personal background, also eventually starting from when you were a child.
I'm Austrian by birth. I now live in Berlin with my family, but I grew up close to Vienna, close to the Hungarian border. So to me, I remember two very important moments in my life, politically speaking. One, of course, was the fall of the Berlin Wall. And the other one then was when the Iron Curtain came down close to our home. So, we always had to go to Hungary to visit friends and wait for 2-3 hours at the border, and suddenly the border was gone. And both of these things, of course, happened in close proximity around the time where I was 13 or so. So in my youth, really. And so they were quite, of course, left a big impression on me. And this is why I think me and also, many of my generation are really quite optimistic about progress and about the future, which is, of course, very much challenged right now. But not too long later, of course, also, Facebook emerged, and back in the day, Twitter, and then there was the Arab Spring. So all this optimism then was projected onto technology. So I was among the first to use those things, and really loved them because it helped me stay in touch with friends and learn about new things. And of course, Facebook, Twitter, many other platforms are very much being critiqued right now for many things. I still think they have value to a certain degree, but in any way, I think back in the day, this techno, almost utopianism, when I grew up, of tech helping to improve the democracy and helping to fix some problems within the political system, has now almost turned into the opposite, where people now almost have a kind of dystopian view of technology, that it destroys and undermines democracy. Of course, I'm not a believer in extremes. I think while we can make fair arguments for both of those things, I think what's interesting to me is how can we use technology and what's out there to improve political communication, management, campaigning, because we know that democracy is under attack, also partially by and through technology. We know that politics needs to change. We know why. We know even what needs to change. I think the hardest bit is how. So what I've always been interested in, and back in the day in 2012, I was involved in founding a new political party in Austria, which is now entering government. It's called NEOS. So my interest was always in, all right, so we have all those ideas, and ideas, of course, are cheap. Anyone can have ideas, but not everyone can or is willing to put in the hours to actually make stuff happen. So I've always tried to help make stuff happen, not always successfully, but what gets me excited is doing stuff, creating stuff, co-creating stuff, getting others to use the stuff, and then, like with Political Tech Summit, finding from their feedback and their responses and their actions that it's actually useful in a very practical sense. So I think this is what we need much, much more of. I'm glad to say that there are more and more what I would call political entrepreneurs around establishing new initiatives. There's still not enough funding, but that is also changing. There's more interest from investors, also philanthropists, in helping to do those kinds of things. So I think we see a positive development. The only question really is, are we fast enough? And I don't think so. I think we need to become faster and bolder and more courageous, because, as I said in the beginning, democracy is under threat, and we're in a battle against time, I'm afraid.
Very interesting thoughts about the one about the speed about yeah, I have another question more related about your professional background or academic background. You partially also talked about it. I mean, about your professional background. But yeah, if you'd like to say something.
So I'm a psychologist by training. I did my first master's at the University of Vienna in psychology, and so I'm very interested in the individual perspective. Psychology is about individual behavior, and impressions and decisions. And of course, over the last years, a lot of stuff has happened in combination with neuropsychology, really understanding how the brain works and how people make the decisions, and also how intellectual thoughts, how ratio relates to the emotion, and that actually emotion is very much what drives us as human beings, even though we like to believe otherwise. So that's to this day, I'm still taking often a very individualistic perspective also of politics, right? Understanding why individual actors act as they do, why they take certain decisions, sometimes, of course, disastrous decisions, sometimes for the better. What are the motives? What drives them? What are they looking for? What role does emotion play? So that's one part of my scientific and academic perspective. The other part is that my second master's has been in public administration. So, if you will, a more abstract, more systemic perspective of politics, of government, of the state. So really zooming out and trying to understand how do those structures and processes of politics then produce a certain policy. And I think, as we have seen over the last years, really, is that policies often are not so much the problem as the politics, because the politics is in many cases these days the bottleneck. You cannot get stuff done. You cannot get stuff decided upon. There are a lot of blockages. And then, of course, it's very hard, even if you can get something done, to communicate it, which is still, of course, part of the politics and the implementation. So this is what I've always been interested in. I've been more a politics nerd, if you will, than perhaps a policy nerd. I'm still interested very much in policy, of course, and it's essential to politics. But this is always the part, and how do people act in it, which is again more the psychological question. And so I've written a book which is called Political Entrepreneurship, where I looked at NEOS, the party I helped co-found in Austria, but back then in 2019 also other new political parties in Slovakia, in Spain, in France, and asked, how have they managed to be successful? How have they managed to enter parliament? What have they done? Who are those people behind them? What has driven them? How have they acted? What methods have they used? So again, very much practical, pragmatic book on how you can actually do something that complex as founding a new political party and then get it to enter parliament and even perhaps governments. That is the combination of many things that I'm interested in: public administration, psychology, politics as a whole. That's what gets me excited.
Yeah, the question about why some people participate in public life and some not is something that I asked to myself many times, and in a way it's also why I'm interested by this word that is civic tech, but also Govtech and everything related. And I'm thinking about what you were saying. So I think there is a sort of cultural problem, because this is also something I want to ask you about. If politicians, policymakers, if they have enough knowledge about these political tech platform movements, because I mean there are policymakers, then there are citizens, and it seems I mean technology evolved very fast, and it seems that I mean most of the people are not aware of the potential use of technology.
Absolutely, I think you're spot on. There is, of course, an awareness, right, of technology and an increasing awareness of that technology is political, and that it can, again, right now, how it can harm the body politics and democracy. I think in general, people are aware of that, right? What they're not aware of are, so what tools do I have available? What tech stack can I build to do my job, which is campaigning, communicating, winning elections better, right? There's a gap, and I just talked to somebody from a political organization yesterday, and they told me, well, political parties, but also I think that applies as much to to unions, associations, and other political organizations. They burn an awful lot of money on useless tech, right? And that means it might not be a bad tool, but it might not be the right tool. Sometimes it may also be bad tools, right? I mean, we know in political tech there are many custom developments because every organization thinks they're unique and they have unique needs. And of course, there are big platforms that you can buy off the shelf that are very expensive and often too big and too powerful. So that's also a problem. But then the conclusion that you have to build stuff by yourself because you know best what you need is not necessarily the right one, because often those platforms and tools that get developed for a specific organization get developed once, are not necessarily programmed very well, and then they don't get developed because this costs money and effort, and people don't use it, and then you have these legacy tech landscapes of tech stacks that are years old, out of date, are not being used because they're clunky. So yes, there is a big innovation gap in politics. What we saw at the Political Tech Summit is that people, once they see what they can actually, what they could have, what they could use, and how they could, potentially stack tools together. There's a CRM, there's a social media management tool, there's a data analysis tool, there's a mobilization platform, and you can put those together. Then you suddenly realize what potential is in there, right? Of course, it's not done by just buying it or subscribing to something and paying for it. Of course, it needs to be implemented. That's the next problem, right? Because then you talked about culture. You need a certain organizational culture. You need structures. You need responsibilities and accountability to actually then make the organization use that tool and learn that tool and getting into the muscle, so to say, of the organization. So that's all quite complex. It's doable, right? It has been done before. And of course, as always, some organizations do it better than others. So what we're also trying to do is we're trying to make case studies available and speakers available who have achieved something, who have done something in the field of political tech, and really get people to learn how they can actually do something like that. You never can copy paste, from one organization to the other. But of course, you can learn about success factors, about what about fails, which is also important. So I think there's an increasing awareness. I think people look for solutions and for tools, and this is what we want to provide.
I saw this fragmentation in political tech, like where every organization build their own custom platform, or maybe they buy the platform from someone else. And several times I thought that maybe people that are working in Civic Tech or Govtech, they can also collaborate on building a platform that can be like modular, and so that it can be customized. I'm thinking about Decidim, but
Yes.
also about other kind of platform. So you don't have to build the platform from zero every time, but you just modify something. And I'm curious about like for a political party that wants to use some new technologies. What has like how to be successful for a political party?
That's a big question, of course. How to be successful? Well, I think it's of course it's there's not just one factor, right? It's about realizing, first of all, what is out there, right? We have 250 or more organizations already on our radar in Europe and beyond, who provide different tools and platforms and apps for political organizations, right? I would bet that most political parties and other organizations can probably name two or three, so there is this big untapped potential of tools. And I'm not saying, that you don't have, perhaps you have the best tools and then, congratulations, but chances are you don't. And then, what are the alternatives? So it starts with realizing, of course, one's needs, and conversations with potential partners can help, because people often don't realize what they could have until they see what they could have. So this is where it all starts. And then, as I said, it's really about the implementation. It's about not just buying the tool, but getting the organization to use the tool, to get everyone to understand why this makes sense, and to show them how this helps drive a continuous improvement across the organization. So it's really a quite complex and challenging process. But once you get a lot of people adopt a particular tool in your organization, then the magic happens, because suddenly you get data, right? Suddenly you get data that you can learn from conversations with citizens, from mobilizing your volunteers, from social media, and then you can make better data-driven decisions. And of course, then this becomes ideally a virtuous circle, where you can show and demonstrate to people that their work has helped you to make better decisions, which has helped them to be more efficient and about their job, and more effective, which helps everyone to be better at winning elections, communicating, and campaigning. I think that's where the magic lies. Of course, this doesn't happen overnight, right? This is hard work. This also needs people to own this and drive this. We know from talking to many political organizations and parties, unions, associations, that most of them don't have a head of tech, for example, right? Somebody who owns the technology within the organization. And if they have someone, it's often a person that is not necessarily on the executive level, but often more an operative person, right? Well, this is not ideal. You need someone to really own the portfolio. What we see in many organizations is that there's a fragmentation within the organization of tools. So this, department uses this tool, the other department uses another tool. Those don't talk to each other, so you create different data pools, and then of course you lose the big picture. You lose the 360 view of your voters, your activists, whoever it might be that you're looking at, and that's a big problem, because then you cannot learn what you could learn from the information that you can create. So those are some factors that are not necessarily rocket science or new, but it still is hard to get them right. And if you get them right, I think political tech can really make a difference.
And I'm thinking that right now there is a sort of transition, like from the physical world to the digital one, also related to governance and participation. And I know that is not possible to know when and if a complete transition will happen. But like, yeah, everything is changing so fast. 2 years ago, we didn't have ChatGPT and or other kind of LLM. And so I'm wondering if you, I mean, I know it's impossible to say when and if this will happen, but if you think that, I don't know, in 10 years or 20 years, like there will be a transition toward technology, because I mean nowadays, I mean politicians, policymakers, they have their public social account. I mean where they write things, citizens can reply, or maybe I'm thinking that some political party can have a private WhatsApp group or something else. But this is quite informal in a way, and so I'm thinking if we can estimate when it will happen.
Yeah, I think there's of course huge potential in technology, in making it useful for democracy, for pro-democratic politics. There's no question about it, right? And again, at the moment we see, I'm afraid, more the deleterious effects, but that doesn't make it, less so that there's a lot of positive potential. I really believe in that. So when will we get there? Well, I mean, we are, I think, we're making progress in the sense of that, there are, for example, technologies that help assist, facilitate deliberative processes. And then there's also, of course, now if you think about ChatGPT and other tools, this kind of listening and summarizing of conversations, and I think there's so much in this. But to your question, I'm not sure that we will leave, and that we should leave the physical space, because I think politics will and should always be to a certain degree physical. So what I believe in is rather a, let's say, digitally assisted democracy, right? And of course we can also talk about stuff like e-voting, right, and other things that lower the hurdle for participation, that allow for participation in the political process independent of location, of time. I think those are great things, but I think there's still a necessity in politics for people to get together in person, sit down and talk. I would even argue that this hasn't happened as much perhaps as it could and should have, that people are more engaging in the digital sphere, that this has helped or has accelerated a certain estrangement from the for citizens from each other, but also from the political classes. So there is this kind of undermining of cohesion, politically speaking, that I'm worried about. So I absolutely believe that digital tools, that political tech, can help us complement that and improve that experience. Why should a human take notes if a tool can do it? If they can help us facilitate a discussion better, perhaps, or just as good as a person can, very good, right? But it still, I think, needs persons to sit together and talk and exchange views and debate. I think that is at the core of democracy, and so I think that will still be necessary, but it can be done much more smartly than it has been done in the past.
Absolutely. And this is a point I would like to touch later. And I'm thinking about all the different approaches inside the European Union. If you have seen some differences between the understanding of political tech and the implementation of it in different countries.
Yeah, I think if you look at France, for example, I mean, Macron has tried a lot of things, particularly in the beginning, and I wrote about it in my book. They used apps early on for canvassing. Basically, they took a lot of insights and learnings, of course, from the Obama campaign. Some of the people that were involved helping Macron were also involved with the Obama campaign. So there has been a kind of a cross-pollination transatlantic wise. And I think Macron was a big believer and probably is still a big believer in technology and in its potential, right? So I think in that sense, France has been at the forefront. I'm not sure that Macron has really, kept pushing this as hard as he could have. But of course, he recently also had the AI Action Summit in Paris that was organized by Make.org that also showed very impressively what you can do with politics, and of course political tech was also a part of that. I know that the Commission, the European Commission, is also trying out things in helping, assisting deliberation, the deliberative processes with digital tools. I think if you look at Germany, I would say there is potential to improve and to catch up. The UK, Labour over the last year in the campaign has tried out stuff. So there is stuff happening, right? It's not that that there's nothing going on. Also in Germany, there are startups and tools that have been tried out in the recent election campaign, right? Where you use AI to assist in informing citizens and helping them inform themselves about the programs and manifestos of the parties. Great stuff, right? I think the question, as always in Europe, is about scaling. So once you have reached a certain level, and you have found your a certain client base, perhaps even that pays you, I think the question is how to go to the next stage, and this is where we get to the question of funding in Europe. There is no fund for political tech now. In the aftermath of the political tech summit, there have been ideas to push something like that, to establish a kind of an investment fund, and of course, if this happens, this would be great, because this would then be a prototype that could be hopefully replicated and grown. That would be fantastic, because money is of course of the essence. You need to pay people to do stuff. You can only get so much from people volunteering their time, and I'm also not sure that you should and could do everything through either philanthropic or public money. I think they have a role to play, but then again, those tools also need to find clients to be sustainable. So I think the potential is huge. I think the market is not there yet. Again, what we're trying to do with the Political Tech Summit and other things that we do in this field, trying to organize this community also digitally with a new platform that we will be launching soon. I think this is really about getting people together, sharing ideas, and then really kind of getting down to business and getting stuff done.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what you were saying before. I mean, debating should be like the core of democracy, and I'm thinking about the importance of data. Data also before the digital era was very important, but nowadays it is absolutely very important, because I mean, it can allow policymakers to know which kind of things citizens would like to see happen. But also data is useful to train AI systems. And I'm thinking about if you think it will be possible in the future for people that participate in the public life with some civic tech software, like to compensate them. Because I see this convergence between I participate in the public life, so I use my time, my free time, and also I'm producing data that is both useful for technology and public life.
Yeah, when I grew up, and I think this still is true for many platforms. There was a saying: if you don't pay for the product, you are the product, right? So this was, of course, about selling your data, and of course we know many negative examples of that. Of course, nowadays it's also about not just selling, but also training models on your data, right? And as you said, if there is a value in this, if you add value by adding your data, you should basically be owning your data. And then, of course, the question is, what's the model in monetizing that? So I think absolutely this is an interesting discussion. And of course, it's also about democracy, who owns your data. But in the end, it's also to a certain degree about business, right? I mean, if you create value, you should be able to capture some of that value yourself in some ways. So I think the discussion is ongoing. I think it's a very interesting one. I think data protection has undergone a significant change. I mean, when I grew up 25, 30 years ago, people didn't really care much about data protection. And this has, of course, changed dramatically these days. I think these days we need to think hard whether we have not overregulated sometimes data protection, certainly in some countries. So I think we should look at that. I think we should experiment with that, and I think it could be to the benefit of everyone if we find creative models and solutions that benefit the data providers, which are in that the case that you mentioned, also of course the citizens.
But I'm wondering if right now there is some I don't know, institution, political party, or some town that is trying to use a civic tech platform and at the same time compensating people that participate.
I don't know, to be honest. I wouldn't know of an example. Do you?
No, actually no. But I was wondering if someone was exploring in this direction, because I see that every one of us is very busy, like studying, working, and everything, and so sometimes we forgot about public life. That is quite important, and so I thought, okay, that could be a way to motivate people to participate more. And this is also related to the question why some people participate in public life and some not.
Yeah, I mean, what I know of are some parties use platforms that incentivize you through credits. So it's not the same as money, but some parties use platforms that when you volunteer for an hour or for a certain amount of hours, when you show up, when you help with something, then you get credits on an app, on a platform, and you can use those credits for different things. So that's a step in that direction, if you will. You help, you participate, you contribute, and then you get something out of it. So I think those are, again, interesting experiments. Of course, there are also arguments against that, because some say, it should be internal motivation if you engage yourself in politics, and it shouldn't be so much externally incentivized. I don't think there's a right or wrong, but I think it can be a part. And of course, gamification, which that is something absolutely that we should experiment with and try out, because of course people are less engaged than compared what they used to be, and so I think those kinds of approaches can help us with turning things around.
Yeah, I also feel the same. And I was wondering, because before you were saying that some parties are using some kind of technologies for their and do you think that we will see some new kind of political party specializing technology that really wants to push this to use a lot of technology, or do you think that all parties will adapt? So maybe both.
We already had the pirate parties 30 years ago. So when I got started in politics, there was, of course, in Iceland, and now there's still the pirate party in the Czech Republic, which is quite successful. In Germany there was a pirate party. So they have been very innovative with technology. Of course, you could argue they've been so innovative that they couldn't handle concepts like liquid democracy, which are quite complex. But perhaps you could argue perhaps some of them, or some of the ideas, were just a bit too early when AI wasn't around, and nowadays those things could be helped with by AI. So to your question, yes, I think we will see more tech-driven parties. Of course, that's also a risk. The extreme case, of course, is now Musk driving the Republican Party, which is, of course, a very negative case of tech overtaking politics. But yes, I think looking at the potential of tech and the potential of data and the potential of learning from the data, there's lots of stuff happening, and as always, there are some parties who are more open and more innovative, the innovation leaders, and then there's some early adopters, and then there are some laggards. But absolutely, we will see a step change in the coming years, because people and organizations will realize what they can actually do with those tools using that kind of data, and of course using AI. So I think we only have scratched the surface so far. And if you look at the US election, if you look at the German election, I think what you see is that they haven't been the AI elections that people expected them to be. But I've heard people say, these would be the last elections where we talk about AI, because at the next cycle in 2, 3, 4 years, everybody will expect AI to be used, so nobody will be talking about it anymore. So there is a revolution ahead. It's just not there yet, and it won't be as loud and boomy as it is now in the US, and hopefully it will be much more positive and much more productive, and less destructive. I think there is a fair chance, and this is again why we do the Political Tech Summit, to make sure that tech is being used for pro-democratic purposes.
I'm thinking about the Pirate Party and the liquid democracy, and I think that right now there could be like two ways, two kind of approaches. One is modernizing actual democratic processes using automation, AI, and other kind of technologies. Or or to experiment with new kind of governance system, as it could be liquid democracy or some kind of direct democracy. And yeah, I don't know, what are your thoughts about maybe both should be done? So yeah.
I think that's the answer, right? I don't think we should do one or the other. I don't think it's realistic and desirable to switch, to liquid democracy or some other concept overnight, right? I think democracy has been there for some time now. It has its flaws. It needs to be improved. But just throwing the kid out with the bathwater, I don't think is advisable. So yes, we have to assist democratic processes with technology. I think that's clear. I think absolutely we should challenge some processes, because if you digitize a process that is dysfunctional, you get a dysfunctional digital process and not a functional one. So that's always the problem, right? Just because you digitize it doesn't make it necessarily better. So yes, of course, we have to take a step back and take a good look at the democratic processes and whether they're still up for purpose in the 21st century. And then yes, I think we should also experiment, but we should experiment within defined limits, within defined areas. Regulatory sandboxes are a great idea to allow for some stuff, to loosen some rules, to try out some things and do experiments, but not with I don't know, a country of 80 million or whatever it might be, from 1 month to the next, right? I think that's a risk that we shouldn't be taking. But yeah, of course it's exciting, and then of course if it works, and some of the stuff will work, then we should look at how we could scale it, and not over 10 or 20 years, but quite fast, right? Because again, it's a battle against time that we're in, so we need to move swiftly.
And talking about risks and the battle against time, is there anything that worry you about the use of technologies or other kind of things related to politics?
Yeah, I think I like to think about this in positive versus negative disruption. I think what we're seeing in the US is quite clearly negative disruption at the moment. The way Musk and others go about the government and how they disrupt processes, impacting tens of thousands of people, and the impact, of course, only will become clear in the coming months and years ahead. I think that's not desirable. But I think what we do need is a kind of positive disruption of some of the processes that where citizens don't feel empowered, not involved enough, not informed enough. I think this is where technology can help. And of course, if that's chat bots, if that's AI agents. I mean, there are so many tools coming out right now that can help with this kind of estrangement of politics and the citizens. I think that's where we need to go, and this is where we need to take a hard look of, again, our processes. And not just tinkering, right? I think the democracy is good at tinkering and being inert and slow to change. And there's also, of course, a protection mechanism, how democracy protects itself. But I think when there's a disconnect between the speed of change in society and in culture and in technology, and then on the other hand, politics, the fights or battles to catch up and loses the momentum. I think that this is where we develop a problem, and this is where we are at the moment. So this is why I say positive disruption. I think there's lots of positive potential that needs to be realized, and we need to work together to do that fast.
How to reach this positive disruption? And I'm very curious when you say that we have to be fast, how much faster? This is
that's a good question. How much faster? Well, I think if you look at many countries right now, I think we're talking about 1 or 2 electoral cycles, which is something between 5 and 10 years. This is what we're looking at, right? I don't believe that the next election might be the last one, even though I'm not sure with the United States right now. But never bet against the United States, so I hope that they will still find a way. I think it's quite critical, also in Europe, right? If you look at Germany, if you look at France, where the far right has been gaining, and of course other countries where the far right is already in the lead or in government. I think it's it's 5 to 12 perhaps. We still can change things. We still can impact democracy and change in a positive way. But we don't have time forever, right? And there's some people and organizations, I think, do act as if there would be unlimited time. There is not. So I'm neither believing that we're doomed, nor do I believe that everything will be fine after all. I think that narrative of progress has been broken, and so I think we have it in our hands. But within the next 5 to 10 years is what we're looking at in achieving this kind of positive disruption of democracy, and this is what I'm trying to help with.
And I have another couple of questions if you have time. And
I have 5 more minutes, then I unfortunately need to go.
Perfect. I'll try to be very quick. Have you seen any kind of different approaches to political tech related to, I don't know, left, right in Europe? Because before we were talking about different approaches from different countries. So I'm wondering about...
Well, I think the left has traditionally more looked at grassroots mobilization, grassroots fundraising, and so therefore, I think overall there would be more apps and tools that would also, align themselves with the progressive spectrum of politics, who do those kinds of things. Then, for example, on the right. Now, I think over the last years, we've seen some changes. I think we've seen that the right has taken up some parts or aspects of the left, including becoming much better at mobilizing, organizing grassroots activists, voters, influencers. So therefore, it's not that clear cut anymore. And then of course, there are also some providers and vendors who do not align themselves with any political spectrum, but who just sell their product. So therefore, I couldn't say that there is nowadays a clear distinction. I think if you look at the US, I think it is the case there that probably the left has more money available for technology out of the reasons that I highlighted. But I think that might be changing as well.
Last question: if you have a message for all the people that are working in the political tech field.
I think it's an exciting time to be involved in political tech, whether you are in a political organization or you are, a vendor and advisor, a software developer. I think there's so much happening right now that can help democracy, that can help improve politics. So I think it's a super interesting community. We're very glad to have gotten to know some really exciting people, some really interesting organizations from across Europe and beyond. So my message would be, let's get in touch if you haven't been in touch with us and with me already. You can go to politicaltech.eu and you can subscribe. And of course, you can attend the Political Tech Summit, which will again happen in Berlin in January 2026. Would be great to see you there, because there's so much to learn and so much to do. And if not now, when?
Thank you a lot, Josef.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. It's been great.